Good day, everybody. My name is Deacon Derek Walcott, and you are watching Shepherd's Corner, Conversations with Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon. And we're on an amazing topic. We're dealing with male or female. The body doesn't lie. And we want to hear Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon's, his thoughts on this. So let's welcome the Archbishop. Good day, sir. How are you?
Deacon Derek, I am good, I am good. This is a very big topic.
Yes.
It's everywhere. Everybody's speaking. Everybody's having their say. And as you know, in Shepherd's Corner, we're going to wade in on the most controversial topics and also the most hotly debated topics that we have around town. So long before ChatGPT was a hot item on the agenda of all the international news, we weighed in on it.
Correct.
And last year I weighed in on this from two different perspectives. This year I'm weighing in on from a different perspective altogether. So I want to start by affirming that the Catholic Church has a position. And that's what I want people to hear and hear clearly. So don't tune off before you hear what the position is. And it starts by saying that there's a Catholic approach that calls for a meeting of mercy and truth. Not just mercy, not just truth, but mercy and truth embracing each other. Mercy and truth coming together. And from that perspective, we have a real great challenge. Because some people want to go down the line of mercy. Some people want to go down the line of truth. And the Catholic position is a you got the word? Paradoxical position.
Right.
Mercy and truth together. And I think that this is very important. You see, each person has an innate dignity that cannot be taken away, regardless of the person's choice. Each person is loved by God and should be treated with love and respect by all of us.
Hold on. So, I think you have to repeat what you just said there, because a lot of people need to hear that.
Each person has an innate dignity that cannot be taken away, regardless of the person's choice. Each is loved by God and should be treated with love and respect by all of us.
Nice.
Why is this important? I often tell young people, if I had $100 bill and I dragged it through the canal, I dragged it through the mud, I even dropped it down in an old cesspool toilet, I took it back out, would you take it?
Asking me that, I'm taking it, yes. A blues, I want it.
Because all it needs is a little washing.
Yes.
We call that baptism, or the sacrament of reconciliation. And its value has not changed. That's an image to understand. No matter what a human being does, their value does not change.
Amen.
Their value is that they are a child of God. And that does not change. What we do doesn't change our value, our dignity, because what we do does not affect who we are as child of God, as creature of God, as being made in the image and likeness of God.
Boy, you're batting better than the West Indies today. Just like, you're batting better than, or bowling better than the West Indies today.
So in answering the question, I want the principle of the dignity of the human person to be clear, center, everywhere. While I'm doing whatever else I'm doing, I want us to recognize this as a central principle that we have to understand.
So my question is, can a man become a woman? That's the question, you know. Can a man become a woman?
You want to try? Huh?
I just asking a question. You know, like my partner Matt, what is a woman? What is a woman? Let me start with that. But we will go down there a little bit.
Let me ask you another question now. And maybe the best way I could answer your question is this. Can a person change race?
No.
Can a white person become a black person?
You know, they try, but no.
You know, there was a white woman who declared that she was black, and she even got a position on a big organization promoting the black cause in America. But was she black?
No.
When you take her DNA to any DNA place to do an assessment of it, she can't make herself African.
Correct.
Her DNA does not lie. Can an elephant become a lion? Can an old man become an 8-year-old girl?
You know, there are all kind of things they call it these days, you know, like transracial and, you know. But no, the fact of the matter is no.
Let me ask you a question then. Can you become a fish?
Definitely not.
Well, then we already have an answer.
Yes.
Because what we're delving into here is what is at the very core of our understanding of humanity. And we have to take the extreme case and understand that, you know, there's some things that no matter what you do, you can't make them something else. So let's take, I always like when I'm testing an idea to take it to the extreme end and look at it there and then bring it back and evaluate it. So let's take an extreme case of a boy with genuine gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
Now, that's a boy who genuinely believes that his gender is different from his biological sex. He believes it. He believes he is a girl. He believes it. For him, this is a matter of truth. We could go so far as to say this is a matter of his truth. Let us say, by way of all modern medicine that allows transitioning, he uses every medical procedure to transition into a girl. So he grows breasts, he changes his genitals to look more like a girl's. Does he in fact become a girl? And this is what is most important. You see, and here is where we are caught with the real challenge of this whole movement. But we have a wonderful researcher, Dr. Abigail Favell, and she wrote a book, The Genesis of Gender. And she makes a really important point. She says, a man who claims to be a woman is a woman in language only.
Yeah.
You hear that?
Yeah. I hear it.
A man who claims to be a woman, or a white person or a black person claiming to be a different race, they are that in language only. Only in language. And she goes further to say, in a postmodern world, that is enough. Because all reality in a postmodern world, all of what is considered true is linguistically constructed.
Yeah.
It's only constructed from language. So if I say that I am a tree, well, I am a tree because I say it. Now, because it's linguistically constructed, does it mean that it is actually so? And that's the real question that she is delving into.
Yeah.
Now, this means that a person chooses his or her identity, then they declare it, then others now must accept that declaration and change their language to support the person's self-declaration, so there is the appearance of legitimacy to the claim. Let me break that one down for you.
Yeah. But you know, Dr. Jordan Peterson got in big trouble for that. He said, I'm not doing that.
Well, so a person declares that they are a different gender. A boy declares he is a girl. Let's say even the boy has extreme gender dysphoria. He believes he is a girl. He says to the world he is a girl. He's constructed a reality for himself that he is a girl. For that reality to become real, he needs other people buying in to his idea now. He needs you and me saying with him that his declaration of being a girl is right, and therefore we now give him the legitimacy of his claim.
Correct.
His claim is his claim, but his claim only has legitimacy when everybody around buys into what he says, agrees with what he says, and starts changing their language to suit this construct that he has created in language. Is that clear enough?
Crystal clear.
So if the young man with gender dysphoria declares he is a girl, and nobody around buys into it, and nobody around participates in his declaration, then his declaration remains an idea that is only his idea. Once we participate in it, it becomes our shared world. Are you with me now?
I'm with you.
Because once it becomes our shared world, it becomes a reality in its own right. And that's where the problem is. That's where the problem is. And here's what she concludes. If gender ideology only exists in language, our language must be manipulated, or else the whole thing falls apart.
Correct.
And that is what is at stake in the battle over pronouns, our understanding of reality itself. So when people get canceled because they will not participate in the constructed reality of someone who has changed their pronouns, what is happening there is that they're using power to construct a reality that is alternative to what you and I know. That is dangerous, and that's where the problem is. So she states the linguistic reshaping of reality is working its way into law. It is working its way into law, and that is why the pronouns are so important. It is why teachers and parents have been brought to court because they refuse to use the pronouns. And that's where the problem really is. It's one thing somebody declaring that they have changed their race, their age, their gender, their ability status, or whatever it is. It's another thing when you agree with them that that change is actually so, you have made it legitimate.
Yeah. And the thing is that when you look at what is the definition of dysphoria, you see that, you know, it is a diagnosis given by mental health professionals to people who experience this distress because of a significant incongruence between the gender in which they personally identify and the gender in which they were born. And therefore, it's a mental health issue. And that's what they're saying.
Yes. And I'll go on to that in a while. But before I get there, in his encyclical, Joy of the Gospel, Pope Francis gives 4 rules for building a people of peace. And the third rule is reality is more important than ideas. How do you like that one?
Listen, when I read this article, and this was his 4th rule, I said, but that man is a boss. You know, third rule, realities are more important than ideas. Yeah.
In other words, the reality of your biology is more important than the idea that you are proposing of whatever you are proposing to be.
Correct.
The biological reality of the young man is more important than his idea that he is really a girl.
The thing is that, you know, again, you spoke clearly that we have to look at the dignity of every person.
Absolutely.
You know,
and that's what I say, but the reality of God's love for that young man as a person of worth, of dignity, loved by God, means that we need to accompany him. We need to listen carefully to him. We need to love him, but it also means we need to speak truth to him.
Right. And that's the importance of the biological reality of sex.
Mercy
yes,
and truth must both meet.
Yeah.
Both have to meet, not one or the other. And it is why the Catholic position starts, begins, continues, founds itself, and ends itself on the innate dignity of every human being. But if reality is more important than ideas, then the biological is where we find the reality. Then gender ideology is where we find the ideas.
Yeah.
And now you have a juxtaposition of what is what.
So the biological reality of the young man is more important than his idea that he's really a girl.
If we're going with the rules of discernment for building peace, reality is more important than ideas.
Well, you know, and the thing is that this thing has just exploded all of a sudden. You know, almost like AI. It almost is coming up along the same lines like AI, you know, and it is exploding exponentially.
Yes, it is. And that's why we have to be clear. We have to be really, really clear in what we're dealing with. That's why I took an extreme case. So even if a young person absolutely believes that their gender is different from their biological sex, even if they believe it with all of their heart, the reality and the idea have to be seen for what they are.
So what's this gender ideology then?
You know, it has become a recent fad to propose this separation of sex and gender. Sex is biological, and according to the latest fad, gender is only a social construct. I remember in the 1990s, there was a Beijing conference where this was first proposed, that gender was only a biological construct. Sorry, the sex is a biological construct and gender is a social construct. And I remember when in Beijing, they were proposing 5 genders. 5. There are books now talking about 90-something and 100 and something genders. Because once you start going that way, where your gender is based on an idea that you have, then the number of genders are going to be multiplied ad infinitum.
Yeah.
So the separation is the beginning of the real challenge. When I was born, it was very simple. You're male or female. And that was as simple as it got. Now there were boys who felt attraction to the same sex. There were girls who felt attraction to the same sex, but they knew themselves as boys and they knew themselves as girls.
Yeah.
And so it was a question of attraction that was different. With the gender ideology, you're dealing with something fundamentally different. Now, before I go to the gender ideology, I want to acknowledge the many elements of masculinity and femininity are socially constructed. Okay? So the idea of womanhood and manhood in Trinidad and Tobago would be very different from the idea of womanhood and manhood in China, India, parts of Europe, parts of America, and other parts of the world, Africa, India, because there are roles and stereotypes that we create for these things because it's too difficult to make it up for each human being that lives. And so human beings tend to create these roles, these stereotypes, and we fit people into basic buckets. And these things change as we go along. So in Barbados in 1645, there was this movement in demography that demonstrates that gender is socially constructed. You had white and black women working at the same level in society, at the very bottom end of society, planting, reaping, doing field work, etc., etc. The plantation system comes in 1646, and within a 20-year period, you now have 65,000 slaves added into the society. And all of us, and a shortage now of white women for the planter class, and all of a sudden the white womanhood goes up the value chain and black womanhood goes down the value chain. And that's the sense of social construction. But they still remain women. They didn't stop being women. So what the ideological gender perspective has done is taking that difference in understanding masculinity and femininity from a cultural perspective and start to say, well, it is socially constructed, and therefore it could be constructed to mean anything that you want. And that's just not so.
Right.
That's where I want to go and deal with.
Yeah,
there are many elements that are socially constructed, but that social construction is based on something that is really rooted in the biology. So the expectations of an African woman is very different from the norms of an East Indian, a French woman, etc., etc. But what the new theories, or rather ideology, disregards is a neuroscience perspective, which demonstrates that little boys and little girls, their brain development is very different because of the hormones that they have charging through their body at a couple months old. A little boy has a peak of testosterone within a couple months of his birth. And that does all kinds of things inside of his brain development. A little girl does not have that. And so even when you talk about the brain development, you have to ask, or you have to realize that no, there are fundamental biological differences between the boy and the girl. And even if a boy with dysphoria or a girl with gender dysphoria transitions and change their body to make it look like the opposite sex, the fact is there are fundamental elements in their body that remain what it was. And that is the point.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's why they want to go and do all kinds of treatments like puberty blockers and hormonal, injections to kind of change this or slow it down or get it to what they want, their reality.
Correct. So if we understand that, then we have to look and see, okay, so what is male and female? And how do we grasp this? How do we understand this? So there's a Vatican document that is called Male and Female. He created them. And I would say if you want to know more about this, Google that document. Just put in male and female, he created them. Vatican document, you'll find it. It was written for educators and for schools to help them to understand how we approach this whole area. It's just one of many texts that I read preparing for this show. But it's a great document. In the cultural context, it is clear that sex and gender are no longer synonymous or interchangeable. So this is a quote from the document, a direct quote. In the cultural context, it's clear that sex and gender are no longer synonymous or interchangeable concepts, since they are used to describe two different realities. Sex is seen by the culture as defining which of the two biological categories deriving from the original feminine and masculine dyad one belongs to. Gender, on the other hand, would be the way in which the difference between the sexes are lived in each culture. The problem here does not lie in the distinction between the two terms, which can be interpreted correctly, but in the separation of sex from gender. This separation is at the root of the distinction proposed between various sexual orientations, which are no longer defined by sexual differences between male and female, and can then assume other forms, determined solely by the individual, who is seen as radically autonomous. Furthermore, the concept of gender is seen as dependent upon the subjective mindset of each person, who can choose a gender not corresponding to his biological sex, and therefore with the way others see that person. That is transgenderism.
And does this come out of this document?
All of that I just read is a direct quote from the document. So let's just break it down a little bit. So the document is saying there's a new cultural context, and sex and gender have been separated. It used to be that sex and gender were synonyms that were interchangeable concepts. Now they've become separated. And they're saying gender, on the one hand, would be the way in which different people or the differences between sexes are lived in each culture. So gender is a construct. Sex is your biology. And the problem is not in the distinction, but in the way that you separate sex from gender. In other words, that sex and gender are no longer intertwined with each other. And then they go on to say the separation is at the root of the distinctions which are proposed between various, what you might call now,
sexual orientations.
It's no longer defined by sexual differences between male and female, and can then assume other roles determined solely by individuals who are seen now as radically autonomous. So I could decide what gender I choose to assign myself, regardless of what sex I was born.
You know, what is, I guess it must challenge people of our age. How come this massive explosion, you know, all of a sudden over the last 11 years or so, maybe less than that we've seen it triple and so on? Why? Is it social media? Is it what? People with different agendas that want to foist these things on us?
You know, that's a hard piece, okay? And I don't want to delve into that because I have not done the research to really understand it. I'll later on in the article, I'll say that in England, you had a 4,300% increase in girls being referred to transitioning clinics. Not a 4% increase, eh? Not a 400% increase, a 4,300% increase.
You know,
You hear that number?
I'm hearing this number. And you know, what is a woman? I mean, you and I watch this thing. What is a woman? When my boy dived down into Africa, I said, what is a woman? And he's talking about this thing. You know, everybody knew. Not only that, but they couldn't understand. There was nothing in their vocabulary to describe what's going on, you know.
Could not understand.
Correct.
They couldn't understand how the West could not understand. But, you know, what the Vatican document also says is the concept of gender is seen as dependent upon subjective mindset of each person.
Correct.
You can choose your gender, and it has nothing to do with your biological sex, and therefore with the way others see you. And that's the transgenderism. Okay? And that's where we talk about an ideology. An ideology is a system of ideas. Remember Pope Francis.
Yeah.
Reality is more important than ideas.
Yes.
The idea that you can change your gender is an idea. The reality does not bear out the idea. And that's what we have to understand. But the reality of God's love for the human person who is struggling with gender dysphoria, who is struggling with all of these things, is a reality that we must also well understand.
Amen.
We can't do the hate speech. We can't do those things. That's not on. We have to love. We have to accompany. We have to listen. We have to understand. We have to keep the conversation going as long as we possibly can, so that we better understand what is happening inside of them. That's our job, and that's our role. And that's the mercy part of the truth part of what we're talking about today on Shepherd's Corner. Can a man become a woman, or a woman become a man?
You know, I want people to hold this in. Yeah,
the body does not lie.
The body doesn't lie. And I want people outside there, not because of this conversation is becoming so explosive, that we remain with this charitable outlook in terms of our brothers and sisters who are struggling with this dysphoria. That's important to me.
It is so important, because at the end, and I like how you put it, at the end of the day, they are our brothers, they are our sisters.
Yeah.
They're part of us, and they're part of our family at the end of the day. So if we move on now from the Vatican document, the separation of sex and gender, I would say, has created a major challenge for individuals, for families, for society. You know, this is where your friend Matt Walsh did his documentary.
177 million views now. Eh? That's where it is today.
But, you know, again, you know, you have to laugh, you know. You have to laugh. And why you have to laugh is because Matt Walsh got canceled everywhere. Everybody canceled the guy. All the social platforms, everywhere that, you know, he could have made money off of his video, he got canceled. And on the first anniversary, he tweeted that it was the first anniversary of the film, and Twitter canceled the guy. Yeah. They took him down. And Elon Musk, who owns Twitter, said, oh, okay. He tweeted about the movie from his own Twitter account. In other words, take me down. And because Elon Musk tweeted it, people who never heard that the movie existed before went to look at the movie. And you're right, 174 million views the movie got. And basically he's saying, what is a woman?
Yeah.
And all of these very profound intellectuals have no answer, because for them, ideas are more important than reality.
Correct.
And for us, reality is more important than ideas.
The one word I want to use is amen. Amen.
You had scientists, you had psychologists, you had professors, you had gender theorists, you had people all over the place couldn't answer the simple question, what is a woman?
There are people who wanted to end the interview when he said, well, just explain to me now, just answer me this question. What is a woman?
People walked out on the interview.
Yes.
But the problem was they didn't dare to define a woman by her biology. And so they became unintelligible. And they often got angry and ended the interview abruptly. You see, gender ideology is harmful to society, to children, to families. Why? Because it's a system of ideas that is brought into life only by language, that has no reality behind it except the reality that you and I give it when we participate in another's ideas construct of their gender. If nobody participated, then the idea just dies. But because people feel that I have to love, I have to affirm, I have to be caring, I have to be loving, and then they say, well, I have to support, but that means then that I have to stop speaking truth.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is where the real challenge is. When you stop speaking truth because of this, then you're really into the deep trouble, because then you start moving differently now.
But what has been happening and what we are seeing is the harmful effects to society, to the children, to families, and in some countries, if a child wants to transition, the child does not need parental permission. Now, that to me is amazing.
That I find completely crazy. Completely crazy. Very recently, Megyn Kelly came out and said, look, I've been supportive all these years of those who want to change their pronouns. I participated in their preferred pronouns. I can't do it anymore. I just can't do it, because I'm participating in something that I can't see how it could be true. And more of that is happening.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you both love and be truthful? And that's the challenge I'm putting before this audience today. We can't be loving to the point where truth is not important, and we can't be truthful to the point where love is not important. We have to do both. We have to do both. And in doing both, we have to realize that you can't allow a child to transition without a parent's consent. In the United Kingdom, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, recently reversed this trend in his schools in England. And he said, listen, you need parents' permission if a child wants to transition. And the school needs to determine whether the impact of that transition, what impact is going to have on other children in the school, and whether or not you should do it for the sake of the common good. So he's using a common good principle.
Yeah.
And he understands that not because a child has gender dysphoria that they should be allowed to use preferred pronouns. You have to look at the whole picture.
Yeah. Totally.
So in the UK, in the past decade, again, I tell you, there are 4,400% increase in recommendations for transitioning. And that is a number that I was not prepared to understand.
What was also important in that study and in that number It was in girls. In
Yes, only girls.
Yeah.
Only girls. Only in girls. And girls were the smallest amount before this sudden surge. So something has happened that has unstuck this whole phenomena, that has allowed something to be brought into being that is just very different. I mean, I've spoken to adult women who said, I grew up as a tomboy because all the other children around me were boys. When I hit puberty, and I realized I had to become a lady, and some things I had to just give up.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was a decision I made, and I made it, and I went. And I've had that from a lot of people, male and female. It doesn't mean now if that child was today, they would have been encouraged to change their gender and be far more troubled as a child growing up than they were. And this one went on to have many children and a family and all the rest of it. So it's really an interesting prospect. What I want to say, the body don't lie. Okay, let's delve into a little bit of biology now.
Yeah.
Because what we do know is the biology. In biology, people are either XY or XX chromosome, male or female.
Yeah.
You're either XX or X. You're either XY or XX.
Yeah.
And that's just how you are. So even after you've taken your puberty blockers, you've done your radical surgeries, you have changed your physical appearance, you've done all of that, your body is still the chromosomal structure that it was before you did all of that.
Yeah. Another partner of mine told me, he said, Derek, if they bury you and 100 years later, they dig you up and they do some DNA checks, and you said you were a woman trapped in a man's body, guess what? You're going to be an X and Y chromosome. You're going to have X and Y chromosome, not X and X, You could take all the puberty blockers, hormonal.
Everything. But the body, the biology of the body remains what it is. And that's why Pope Francis's thing that reality is more important than ideas.
Yeah.
And the reality of your chromosomes in your body, which is the very structure of your body, is more important than the idea of what gender you believe or you think you ought to be. And that's just a truth. So even with everything, that's how the body remains. And therefore, no matter what you've done to your body in the transition, your body fundamentally remains a male body or female body as it was at the time of your birth. Okay. I know the phenomenon of the intersex.
Yeah. Yes. I wanted you to talk now about that.
I know. Now, people get confused around this topic because I want to use a medically precise term. Medicine calls it disorders of sexual development or congenital conditions of sexual development. And that comes from Favell. And here you have the XY, or what they might call the XO, which is the way in which the congenital condition in which the boy or the girl, the chromosomal structure didn't quite develop to how it ought to be. Mm-hmm. So let's be clear on one thing. This is not a third sex, okay? These are people whose chromosomal development was not like the rest of us. And they account for, in different populations, between 0.5 to 1.3% of the population.
Hold on, of the population. I want people to hear that.
Of the entire population.
Nice.
0.5.
Yes.
And at the most 1.3. The highest they've found in any population was 1.3. And we don't know even what's the relationship between, I don't know anybody has done a study between contraception and this. I don't know. Or between, I don't know what else and this. So those are things that I think we have to start looking at. The fact that this is now, so many years on and becoming such a fad now, we have to ask, is there something that changed 50, 60, 70 years ago that has made this thing so become such a phenomenon today?
Yeah.
I don't know. But let's say that the intersex has always been there. That's not new. The percentage of the population is what we have to look at. Is it something that is growing in some populations and not in other populations? And then we could start charting what are we actually dealing with. So the fact that this is not a foundation for transgenderism, it is a birth defect that is very traumatic for those who grew up and experience this condition. Now, in chapter 19 of Matthew's Gospel, I have a beautiful way that Jesus has dealt with this. He makes two separate statements. The first statement is that in the beginning, the Creator made them male and female and said, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and will be united with his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. That's the first statement he makes. That is in verses 4 and 5. And that's your majority position.
Yeah.
But he goes on later in verse 12 and says, for there are eunuchs who were born that way, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, and there are those who choose to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven.
Nice.
And so Jesus acknowledges that there are eunuchs who are born that way.
Yes.
So the eunuchs made so by man would be called the castrati. They were castrated for various reasons. But the eunuchs born that way would be what we might now call the intersex, or those who are born with a congenital defect. What I want to point out as most important here is Jesus accepts both that God made them male and female, and that marriage is the norm for all human beings. And at the same time, he accepts that there are some people who were born as eunuchs. And that's that.
I like the part where he says, and those who choose to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven.
You know you're coming to bowl a ball at me. Listen, but you like the West Indies. I'm going to bat you out of the wicket. So Jesus did not take the anomaly and make it normative for the majority. He didn't say because we have eunuchs, there's no longer male and female.
Correct.
There is male and female, and there is eunuchs. And eunuchs is not a foundation for transgenderism. It's not the foundation. And it is that we have two realities that we must take pastoral care of. And that's really what we have to deal with. Both, not one, not the other. If, society, I think now, is starting to wake up and realize that something has gone really, really wrong. A boy cannot become a girl. A girl cannot become a boy. If they attempt this, their bodies still remain male or female at the core structure of the chromosomes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't transition. What is at stake, I think, is a very understanding of what it is to be human. And I think we have to really work with that. We can't just play around with language because it will make somebody feel good when that undermines the very foundations of humanity itself. There's a professor in sociology, Mark, who raises an alarm. Here's what he says. In 11 short years, the LGBTQ identification among young Americans has tripled. Has tripled in 11 short years. I remember 2015, 2016, when this thing first started, when I first started hearing this thing in the news, I went to read about it, delve into it, try and understand why is this emerging so? Well, he's saying in the last 11 years, which is from 2012 till now, it has tripled. So this needs to be a key pastoral consideration for all of our youth ministry. We have to talk about it openly and honestly. In Trinidad and Tobago schools, I know this has exploded already.
Yeah.
And in a way, the principals and the teachers are unprepared for this. We had a conversation, the principals of the secondary school and myself, about this, and we're working now with them to give them what they need to be able to understand and approach this from a Catholic perspective, which is both truth and mercy. But the first thing and the last thing I want us to remember, these are our children.
Correct.
They need our help, they need our love, they need our care. To propose transition is not love or care, it's really not. But we need to accompany, we need to listen, and we need to speak the truth. This is not an either or proposition,
I know, but my whole thing on this, boy, is this part of the Western culture? Has this exploded in the West only?
Well, where the Western culture is received, it's exploding.
I'm glad you said that.
Wherever Western media is, it is exploding. Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
The world is shifting. Science is giving us better insights, but it is also opening far more options and thus more confusion while we are journeying together as a community of inclusivity and dialogue. And we have to journey together on this one. We can't leave anybody out, and we can't cast anybody out. Remember, mercy and truth are the two watchwords that we're working with. Key message?
Give me the key message.
Declaring something with language does not make it real. It just don't make it real. I could say anything in language, it don't make it real. The action step, I really want the viewer to look at your feelings and your emotions about the topic. Are you leaning more to mercy or more to truth? Because each one of us will lean more to one or the other.
Yeah.
Whichever one you're leaning to, that's okay. Acknowledge that, and then look and ask, what does the other one require of me? Ask God for help to be able to hold both truth and mercy together. And the scripture reading is Psalm 85:10, and our Matthew reading. The psalm is love and faithfulness have met together. Well, it's really mercy and truth have met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. And the other one is that from the beginning, God made them male and female. But Jesus also said there are men who are born eunuchs. And so you have both realities in the same passage from Jesus, and he just simply puts them side by side.
Boy, Archbishop J, there's a lot of people are watching this show. And we want to tell people to really look at that. Male and female, the body doesn't lie. But also, we need to look at the dignity of the person, and the importance of the biology, the reality of sex over the ideas.
Reality is more important than ideas.
Correct.
But let's close up this show.
Amen.
Let me pray. Father, I pray for all of us, for everyone, anyone who is looking at this, who is struggling with gender dysphoria or questioning their gender in any way. We ask, oh God, for your merciful love to touch each one. Give us hearts of wisdom, Lord, that we will know how to be merciful and truthful without compromising either one. And open our hearts, Lord, that we might be the church that you want us to be through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you so much, Archbishop J. God bless you. Don't forget, we're on Thursday, twice on Thursday, twice on Sunday. You know, go tell your friends and pick up your Catholic news. God bless you, Archbishop J, and thank you so much for this conversation.
God bless you.
Okay.